The CEO's patience had run out. Every Friday, without fail, the janitor left an hour before his shift ended. No excuses, no explanations, just vanished. In her pristine glass office on the top floor, she watched him again through the surveillance feed. Pushing his cart down the hallway, head bowed, uniform slightly worn, shoes leaving faint marks on the polished floor. He was quiet, polite, invisible. But to her, he was a pattern of inefficiency she couldn't tolerate. The company was under pressure. Investors were circling, the board demanded layoffs, and she refused to let something as small as a careless employee slip through her watch. That Friday, she decided to follow him herself. When the clock hit 4, she saw him clock out, again, without a word. Her assistant tried to stop her, but she simply grabbed her coat and followed the man out into the parking lot. He didn't drive a car. Instead, he hurried toward the bus stop, clutching a small brown lunch bag like it held something precious. The CEO stayed back, keeping her distance, watching him board the city bus. She followed the bus in her sleek black sedan, wondering if she'd catch him in a bar, wasting company time and her money. But instead, the bus stopped near an old community hospital on the outskirts of the city. The janitor got off, walked straight through the sliding glass doors, and disappeared inside. Curiosity gnawed at her. She parked and entered the building. Inside, the air smelled of antiseptic and quiet heartbreak. Nurses moved softly, and the fluorescent lights hummed above. She followed the janitor down a narrow hallway, where he stopped outside a small rehabilitation room. Through the glass window she saw her answer. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9, sat in a wheelchair. Her legs were thin, her face pale, but her eyes, they were full of light. The janitor knelt beside her, unwrapped the brown lunch bag, and took out 2 small sandwiches. He smiled and brushed her hair from her face. The CEO froze. He helped her stretch her hands, count softly, and cheer as she tried to move her left leg. Every time she managed a tiny movement, his eyes filled with tears he quickly wiped away. When the nurse came over, he stood quietly in the corner, listening carefully to every instruction. The nurse turned to him and said something the CEO could just barely hear. "You're doing great with her exercises. The doctor said she's improving faster than anyone expected." He nodded. "We've been practicing at home. Fridays are her extra session days. I just can't afford to miss them." The CEO's throat tightened. He wasn't leaving early for himself. He was leaving early for her. The janitor reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, folded paper. A drawing. A crayon version of 2 stick figures holding hands under a yellow sun. The words, written in a child's uneven scrawl, said, "My hero, Dad." He smiled softly, taped it to the wall, and whispered something to his daughter that made her giggle. Then he looked up and saw his reflection in the glass, her reflection, standing behind him. For a brief second, neither spoke. He looked startled, then guilty. "Mom, I." She raised a hand slowly. The hospital lights flickered above them as silence filled the space between a CEO who measured everything in hours and results, and a father who measured life in moments and miracles. Her eyes softened, but she said nothing. Not yet. The janitor turned back toward his daughter, brushing her hair again, pretending not to notice the powerful woman watching from behind the glass. And for the first time in years, she realized she was witnessing something her spreadsheets could never measure. Dedication that couldn't be clocked, loyalty that couldn't be bought. The world outside kept moving. But inside that quiet room, something inside her began to shift. She stood there for a long moment, her heart heavy with something she hadn't felt in years. Humility. The janitor wasn't just an employee anymore. He was a man fighting battles no one saw, quietly carrying love stronger than exhaustion, duty, or fear. That night, the CEO couldn't sleep. The image of that little girl's smile kept replaying in her mind. Fragile but determined, like she'd inherited her father's quiet courage. She remembered the brown lunch bag, the drawing on the wall, and the way he'd looked at her when he realized he'd been caught. There was no defense in his eyes, just honesty and love. The next morning, when the janitor walked into work, he found an envelope on his cart. Inside was a letter written in the CEO's own handwriting. "Your dedication reminded me what real strength looks like. From today, you'll no longer need to leave early. Because I'm giving you Fridays off, fully paid. And one more thing, I'd like to fund your daughter's full treatment. Consider it a thank you, not for the work you do here, but for reminding me what purpose really means." The janitor stood frozen, eyes wide, the paper trembling in his hands. His coworkers stopped to look, whispering as he read the note again and again, barely believing it. Tears filled his eyes. For months, he had worked double shifts, skipped meals, and sold what little he had just to keep up with hospital bills. He had prayed for a miracle, not knowing it was watching him all along from a corner office. Later that day, the CEO visited the hospital again. She found the same little girl by the window, holding a drawing of 2 stick figures. But now, she had added a third. "Daddy said you're the nice lady who helped us," the child said shyly, handing her the drawing. "Thank you for making my daddy smile again." The CEO knelt, feeling her eyes sting. "No, sweetheart," she whispered. "He's the one who helped me." Outside the window, sunlight broke through the clouds, pouring into the room like a quiet blessing. The CEO had always believed success came from power, control, and precision, but that day, she learned it could also come from compassion. From choosing to see people not as employees or numbers, but as stories. And somewhere between board meetings and hospital corridors, she discovered the one truth that changed everything: kindness doesn't cost a business. It builds one. From that day forward, the company's culture began to shift. Employees noticed the CEO smiled more, listened more, and stayed late not to watch the numbers, but to listen to the people behind them. And every Friday, a father walked home early, not in fear of being caught, but in the peace of being understood.